So the UK has this unwritten rule book. And today we're going to dive into what that actually means and get into the really fascinating debate about whether it's finally time to write it all down.
Just imagine for a second. What if the most important rules for your country weren't all in one single place? You know, the powers of your leader, your rights as a citizen, the entire structure of the government. All of it just scattered across centuries of different laws, traditions, and court decisions. Well, this isn't some thought experiment. For the United Kingdom, that's the reality. They operate without a single unified constitutional document. And believe me, that one simple fact has huge consequences for how power works and how rights are protected. Right, so what are we really talking about here? The fancy term for it is an uncodified constitution, and it's a concept that really sets the UK apart from most other modern democracies. So here's what you need to know. Basically, what this means is there's no single master document you can just pull off a shelf. Instead, the UK's constitution is this complex tapestry that's been woven together from acts of parliament, court rulings, and just long-standing conventions. It's more of a living, evolving rulebook rather than something carved in stone. And this is the crucial part. As it stands, a law that defines a fundamental right can be changed by Parliament just like any other normal law. A written constitution? That would change everything. It would literally put these core rules above everyday politics, making them the supreme law of the land.
You know, this isn't just some academic debate for dusty old books. The question of actually codifying all these rules has been looked at the very highest levels. Back in 2015, the UK Parliament actually launched an inquiry into this exact issue.
So they put together this special committee to look into what it would take to codify the Constitution. And what's cool is they didn't just write some dry, boring report. They actually kicked off a national conversation, asking the public what a modern British Constitution could even look like. Get this, the committee called their whole inquiry a new Magna Carta. I mean, they were deliberately referencing the Magna Carta, the iconic 800-year-old Charter of Rights. That tells you this wasn't just about legal tidying up. They saw it as a historic chance to redefine the relationship between the government and the people.
All right, so this report really dug into some of the biggest questions a written constitution would have to deal with. And a lot of them really boil down to one thing: who holds the power and how? So let's break it down. What's the deal now versus what could it look like? Okay, first up, the head of state. The current system is a constitutional monarchy, where the role is passed down by birthright. The alternative? A directly elected head of state, which would basically turn the country into a republic. I mean, that's one of the biggest, most fundamental choices you can make. All right, next, let's talk about the second chamber in Parliament. Right now, you've got the House of Lords, which is, well, almost completely unelected. It's a mix of people appointed for life and some hereditary peers. A big proposal is to just replace it with a fully elected chamber, maybe one that represents the different nations and regions of the UK.
And then, of course, there's the Prime Minister. You know, a lot of their biggest powers, we're talking declaring war, signing treaties, they're not actually written down in any one law. They're based on tradition. The alternative would be to spell them out in a specific act, which would make those powers really clear, and maybe, just maybe, limit them. And this cartoon, it's just perfect. It nails a timeless truth about law and power. The parliamentary report itself used cartoons like this one to add a bit of humor, reminding everyone that no matter how historic or important a document is, someone in power is always going to be looking for the loopholes. Okay, so we've talked about the structure of government, but what about something maybe even more important to our daily lives? Individual rights. How does the way things are now stack up against having an actual written Bill of Rights? Now, don't get me wrong. Under the Human Rights Act, people in the UK already have a lot of fundamental rights protected, from the right to life to freedom of speech. On paper, it's a pretty solid list. But here's the real kicker. What happens when a new law comes along that clashes with those rights? And this right here is probably the single biggest change we're talking about. Right now, if Parliament passes a law that goes against the Human Rights Act, judges can point it out, but they can't actually strike it down. Parliament is still number one. A written constitution could give courts the power to completely invalidate laws they find unconstitutional. That would be a massive shift in power. And, you know, just like this other cartoon from the report cleverly points out, when you're talking about your rights, the small print is everything. And this question of who gets the final say, Parliament or the courts, well, that's about as important as small print gets. So, what's really important to get about this whole project is that the parliamentary committee wasn't trying to come up with all the answers. That wasn't their goal. Their goal was to start a nationwide conversation by asking the public some very, very direct questions.
Nope, they put these questions right out there to the public. Should the Prime Minister's powers be written down in law? Should the House of Lords be elected? How should power be spread out across the country? These aren't just questions for politicians and lawyers, they're questions for every single citizen. And that really brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? Is a nation's constitution something to be perfected and then set in stone for all time? Or is it a reflection of an ongoing, always evolving national conversation? For the UK, that conversation is definitely still happening.